Okay, the work session of Wednesday, September 6, 2017 will come to order. We're going to change the schedule a little bit. We're going to move first to agenda item number 4. And I think this is, Christian's going to present this to us. You have the floor, Christian.
Good evening, everyone.
Mike.
Sorry. Yes. The applicant is seeking MXT conceptual site plan approval to develop a townhouse community for property known as 7003 Van Dusen Road to be called Spring Arbor. The proposal includes 55 townhouses. The site will also include visitor parking, sidewalks, utilities, open space areas, landscaping, stormwater management, and drainage facilities. The property was annexed into the city in 2008 as R5, but later rezoned as MXT in 2015. Also, the subject property was approved to develop an assisted living facility in 2015. However, the applicant is now seeking approval to construct a townhouse community as opposed to the assisted living facility to the change of the neighborhood and to the market as well. Do you guys have any questions?
Okay, let me, before I go down the council members here. When I looked at the planning commission meeting, were there any conditions here? Christian?
Yes, there are.
Why don't you just go quickly over the conditions?
Okay.
Mike, is your mic on?
One
Yeah,
second.
it is.
All right, then speak up.
You bet. Go ahead, Christian.
Okay,
Just
one sec.
summarize the conditions, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. So in short, the conditions that will be a part of the staff report for the Planning Commission will be all construction shall conform to the approved final MXT site and landscape plan as approved by the City of Laurel Planning Commission with any additional conditions referred by the Mayor and City Council. Applicants shall also comply with any and all conditions as approved with the preliminary plan. All other requirements and conditions submitted by city departments as contained within the report shall be submitted in conjunction with the final MXT site and landscape plan to the Planning Commission. Applicants shall comply with all applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations in the development of the property.
Okay, and let me just, where are they in the planning process with the stormwater management plan? Has that been approved, or is that down in the county still?
I believe it's still down in the county at this time.
Thank you, Mr. DePietro. Mr. DePietro indicates it's still down in the county. Well, let me ask you this. You don't have to get up. Are we making progress?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Fred?
Good evening, Christian.
Good evening.
Can you tell me what the city's requirements are briefly for workforce housing, and particularly the number of units threshold?
The city's requirements for our affordable housing plan is strictly for multifamily units for rental. We do not have a component for sale units, so therefore this project will be excluded from that program.
Got it.
Rental only.
Oh, rental, I got it. Okay.
Just building on that a little bit, but,
Right.
but the threshold is kind of high even for the rental units.
It is.
What is it, $1,400 or something? $1,400 a month?
The threshold is pretty high for what's out now, but any new apartments that are constructed will have a lower threshold that will be required. They will be at the 50 and 60% of the AMI for the
Okay,
area.
all right.
The older approved projects were at the 70 and 80 threshold.
Okay, excellent.
That's all I have for now.
Thanks, Fred. Valerie?
ready to ask my question. I wanted to know about I don't think it's called Section 8 housing, but just affordable housing. That was my...
Right, yeah, as stated earlier, the city just has an affordable housing program that's geared to multifamily for apartments. We don't have a for sale component.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you, Valerie. Donna?
What were the marketing changes that were presented? Was it the location? As far as changing it from assisted living to townhomes, non-assisted living?
It was mostly due to the nature of the hospital change, Laurel Hospital.
Mr. Petro, you want to come forward so you can respond to that question? State your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Robert Petro, 502 Gorman Avenue, Laurel, Maryland. The change was submitted that when the hospital decided to redo the entire hospital, now the University of Maryland is taking over. That's going to end up being roughly 25, 30 acre campus. And with the hospital missing, the assisted living was not, interested in proceeding with what they were going to do, and pretty well felt that that could very easily be a component on the campus, built by the university. So we certainly understood their right to walk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Mr. Ricks?
Ms. Pulley, could you speak to the parking that's being required at this particular development, please?
Sure. The applicant is proposing 4 parking spaces per dwelling unit. The code requires 3 parking spaces per dwelling unit. There's going to be a total of 236 parking spaces, including 16 visitor spaces throughout the community.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Mr. Smalls?
Ms. Pulley, can we talk a little bit about environmental and sustainability kinds of things? What's going to be brought to this project that would meet some of those? I know one question earlier was about stormwater, but pervious surfaces, those kinds of things. Is there anything in this project that would address those kind of sustainability, environmental concerns?
I'm sure there are. As of right now, I haven't received them. I think a lot of it's going to be dealt with more at the detailed site plan process. I don't know if the applicant or Mr. Vitro has more information regarding that, but I don't have any information at this time.
Mr. DePietro is shaking his head in the affirmative, so
Okay. Yeah.
Presuming that at the appropriate time, Planning Commission, those kind of items would be brought up.
Good evening, if I could, Mr. Mayor, Mr. President.
Mr.
members
Gibbs,
of the-
state your name and address for the
Yes,
record, please,
I
sir.
was going to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Edward Gibbs, an attorney with offices in Largo, here representing the applicant. Appreciate your helping me out here this evening. Yes, well, it will in fact be addressed in greater detail as part of the preliminary subdivision plan and the detailed site plan. Of course, we're really just here on the conceptual site plan, but we are certainly going to be using best management practices, and in particular with regard to the stormwater management plan, we'll be using bioretention in an effort to reduce impervious surfaces to the maximum.
Okay,
But we'll have more information for you on that.
perfect. Thank you, Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Smalls. Anything else?
Yeah, I got a comment.
Mayor, go ahead.
Christian, just make sure we work with the applicant. Stormwater management is done through Prince George's County. I don't want to get in an argument over what we want and what they want, so let's work together ahead of time.
Yes,
We're
sir.
looking for something, as you know, the council's very involved in the environmental end of it as well as the administration, so let's work that out before us.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so if everybody's in agreement, we'll go ahead and introduce and hold the first public hearing on this agenda item at the Mayor and City Council meeting on Monday, September 11th, 2017 at 7 p.m. Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Move to agenda item number 1, ordinance number 1918. An ordinance to amend the operating budget of the Mayor and City Council of Laurel, Maryland for fiscal year July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. Michelle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is our third amendment to the operating budget for FY17. This would be our final ordinance to reallocate funds and provide some funding for the CIP. So we had additional real estate, personal property, and state shared taxes, as well as red light camera citation revenue, savings in various department expenditure budgets, which we're proposing to provide a transfer to the CIP for cash funding of future projects, as well as a transfer to the Community Redevelopment Authority and an additional contribution to the pension fund. The transfer to the CIP would be $2,560,501. The additional contribution to the pension fund would be $220,000. Also included in the transfer to the CIP would be $91,714 additional highway user revenue that we received during the year. Those funds will have to be dedicated specifically to street projects, as well as $500,000 for fleet and $1,280,000 for projects to be determined in a future ordinance to come before you to amend the CIP. Additionally, with the red light camera revenue overage comes a corresponding expenditure, so that adjustment will be in the police department budget, as well as intra-departmental transfers made within the Department of Parks and Recreation and Department of Public Works. As you are familiar with the budget, they have multiple sub-departments, so this includes those transfers. The Laurel Police Department has used state-awarded seized currency to fund investigative activities. The use of those funds is required to be shown in the operating budget. Excess collections and various revenue line items and savings and various expenditure line items are proposed to be transferred from the unassigned fund balance of $150,000 each to increase the balances in the employee insurance reserve, the vehicle fuel reserve, and the utility reserve. So the overall increase to the budget is $2,578,448.
All right, Michelle, let me move first to Mr. Ricks.
No comment, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Ms. Crary.
I'm fine with this at this time.
Great. Ms. Nicholas.
I'm fine with it too.
Mr. Smalls.
Michelle, I'm fine with this, but I just have a question. Can you tell me if in this budget there's corresponding revenue for the special taxing district that's shown under expenditures?
Yes, that is shown. It's department number 965. It's on page 3 at the bottom. It's the very last expenditure department number.
At the bottom.
Yeah, I see that, but that's under expenditures. Is there a corresponding revenue?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
It's on the second page. It's within the grouping of real estate tax revenue.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And essentially, that money's lockboxed, is that correct, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. So I get a couple questions. Thank you for putting more money into the pension plan. We're making progress. If I remember correctly, our pension plan is somewhere 78, 79%, is that correct?
It's in the 70s, mid-70s,
Yes, and that's,
74.
I speak to our friends at National League of Cities, they're amazed. Because some of them, they're not in that 70% range. Okay, the other question is, I didn't get a chance, I was going to go by and ask somebody that I know that's in the appraisal business, did the did the real estate property values go up a slight amount this year overall, or was this due to new building?
It was a combination of the additions of new construction
Okay,
and the final full year of some others that.
okay. So we were on a quarter-year assessment for some of the new construction, is that
Right, but
correct?
they're pretty far behind recording those, so they don't catch up quite as quickly as when we're budgeting.
And they don't assess the taxes back, is that correct? They're not assessed till they record, or they do go back?
They do
They do go
back.
back, so we play catch-up at that point.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. Any other questions of Michelle on this amendment to the operating budget? If there are none, we will introduce and hold the first public hearing at the Mayor and City Council meeting on Monday, September 11th, 2017 at 7 p.m. If there's any other questions on this, make sure you go through City Administrator if you have a chance to look at this over the coming week. We'll move to agenda item number 2, resolution number 1317, a resolution to name an existing structure within an existing park. Mr. Fleming, you have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. President. I got it.
Are you going to take care of it, Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a resolution that is renames the Burton Community Stage. If you remember, we talked about this. Kay Harrison, who passed away, was very instrumental in both making sure that there was the stage there as well as the just lost the words. What's the cover for the stage as well? And with Kay's passing and her commitment to the July 4th committee as well as to the community, we wanted to rename the stage, and she was very knew Bobby Burton, who this is Robert Burton, who this is named after. We decided that the city would like to ask the council to confirm our findings, and that is that she was very involved in the community. She was involved in the July 4th committee. She was an individual that was dedicated to the city, and with that, we'd like to rename the stage as the Harrison Burton Community Stage.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any comment about this? I think we had all been briefed on this. I think it's a good move. Mr. Smalls?
I support this. I think all of us have a story to tell about Kay. This stage, I think it's very appropriate to have her share the name. Just recounting very quickly an experience with Kay when we planned our first back-to-school jam. Kay was a staff person who worked with us, and she was very instrumental in us using the stage. So I think, again, it's very appropriate. And she was very instrumental in guiding us on exactly what we needed to do, what departments in the city, et cetera, that we needed to work with. So it's a very appropriate renaming.
Thank you, Mr. Smalls. Mr. Ricks?
What Fred said and more.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Ms. Crary?
Wholeheartedly agree.
Thank you. Ms. Nicholas?
Delighted to support.
Okay. All right, so this, we're all in agreement. This will be introduced, and we'll hold our first public hearing at the Mayor and City Council meeting on Monday, September 11th, 2017, at 7 p.m. Move to agenda item number 3, ordinance number 1917. Text amendment number 248, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council amending Laurel City Code, Chapter 20, Section 20-1.7, definitions, and Section 20.6.23, accessory structures bulk regulations to authorize little free libraries in certain zones and providing for an effective date. Christian, you have the floor.
Good evening again. The proposed text amendment is to allow Little Free Libraries, which is a detached accessory structure where free poetry, books, and other literature can be exchanged for readers of all ages. All poetry, books, and literature placed in the Little Free Library must be of the appropriate size. It can't exceed 40 square feet and must fit easily within the structure. The Little Free Libraries will be allowed in the following zones: the R5, which is one family detached, R55, which is also one family detached, RMD, which is single family detached, medium density, commercial village, CV, and commercial neighborhood zones. The structure shall adhere to all the regulations outlined in the proposed ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Christian. I think we're all familiar with Little Libraries. We've gotten a lot of attention over the last couple of years in various magazines and so on. Mr. Ricks?
I have no questions. I support it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smalls?
I support this as well, but I just have one question that kind of caused me to wrinkle my brow.
Sure.
Under section 20-6.
Unwrinkle it for him, will you?
Yeah, please do. 6.23, item 4, the area of that portion of the structure in which materials are placed shall not exceed 40 square feet. Is that?
That's correct.
So these can be anything from the size of a mailbox to a much larger structure.
That is correct. The idea is that it's similar to a mailbox, but it could be larger, but not larger than 40 square feet. In some jurisdictions, people were using like adaptive reuse appliances like couches, refrigerators, and we don't want that type of experience in the city of Laurel. We want something that's going to be constructed and nice and upheld.
So theoretically, if a structure is this size, 40 square feet, then that means people can actually sit inside of it and read and...
I don't think they'll be able to sit inside of it.
No?
No, I don't think it's big enough for that.
Okay, all right.
If I may add, I participate in these small libraries. They're around different parts of Maryland, and they actually look like little houses.
Right.
With it's like the little steeple, and it's a very good idea. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Smalls. Thank you, Ms. Nicholas. Ms. Crary?
Probably someone my height could sit inside, not Mr. Small's height. It sounds like the size of maybe a bookcase would be 40 square feet if you did a 4 by 10. I think it's great. What's the vision? I mean, we've mentioned single-family residences. How would we implement it in other areas in town?
Well, one of the reasons that we brought it to the council after support from the administration, we received a few calls from citizens, and they all lived in single-family neighborhoods. So we thought it would be a good idea to at least start in the single-family dwelling neighborhoods in the commercial village zones, because throughout some of the areas in Maryland, they're mostly in like historic districts or more commercialized areas.
So we would be spreading throughout the city. Hopefully, that's the goal.
I can't say at this time. We'll have to see how it goes.
Well, the vision is...
The vision is to be able to have a successful program where little libraries where people can place their literature in a safe environment and there's no nuisance or anything to take place.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. President, go ahead. I yield.
Okay. I've actually seen them inside of Mom's, the organic store.
Oh, really?
But I've seen them in other parts of Maryland. Now, would we be purchasing these little houses? Or?
No, it's not purchased through the city. Like a citizen or a business will have to purchase or construct it.
You can go right over to Catonsville. That's closest at Elmore.
Okay.
Could I also interject that this is something that we are looking at doing in some of our parks as well, to create those in places where there's seating areas, shaded areas to, and we're looking at the concept where they look like small birdhouses, and they'll be placed in various places, as well as incorporating them as pieces of art, since we are looking at having the art in public places as well.
Let me just comment. You need to be careful with that, because I've did a lot of reading on the web about this. Part of the problem with putting them in public areas is the maintenance issue, or the destructive issue, let me just say it that way. Whereas typically if they're on somebody's property, that person is watching out over it. So we just need to be very careful about where we put these things. That's all. I don't want to discourage it. I'm just saying it's something we need to watch.
She'll be watching as if they're on public.
But you got a canary camera up there?
Park and Recs Division will be watching.
Canary cameras.
Mr. President.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
Mr. President.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Ricks, go ahead.
I've seen also some of these things, and, libraries sometimes don't want certain types of books and that sort of thing. And so I've actually seen people be very creative about how they do this, and they'll take an old tree and they'll incorporate some kind of a structure into an old tree or a stump or something like that, and they'll take the books that they have read and they'll put them out there and post it that it's free to take the book and read it and then return it at your own leisure. So in that's my vision of what this is saying here. And like I said, the libraries are great, but sometimes they just are overwhelmed and they just can't handle everything. And so somebody that reads constantly has plenty of resources to share with other people. So I totally approve of the concept.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Anything else?
I have one other
Mr.
comment
Smalls, go ahead.
I'd like to make, or a question I'd like to ask. Based on what I'm reading here in terms of locations, the comment was made a few minutes ago about private property versus public. Controlled communities, quite frankly, like are predominantly in Ward 2. This doesn't seem to include those kinds of properties, or does it?
If it's zoned one of the following classification, it does.
Covenants issue.
The homeowners association is going to have the final say.
Okay.
So we may give them a permit, and the homeowners association say, well, you got your permit, but you're not putting it up in our area. They have final say.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah.
Covenants issue.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like with other permits, if they're in a controlled environment that has a homeowner association, before they're issued a permit, we have to have a letter from the homeowners association saying they have permission to install a
Sure, I
fence.
understand that. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't something that excluded those kind of communities.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, excellent. All right.
Anything else? All right, if everybody's in agreement, we'll introduce and hold the first public hearing at the Mayor and City Council meeting on Monday, September 11th, 2017 at 7 p.m. Move to agenda item number 5, resolution number 14-17. A resolution of the Mayor and City Council of Laurel approving an easement for a driveway to access 24 4th Street, Laurel, Maryland, and authorizing the mayor to sign the easements. Marty, you have I'm sorry, excuse me.
Good evening. This is actually in response to an inquiry that we had from the resident at 24 4th Street, which is the property that abuts Riverfront Park. We did upon our investigation, we found that the current easement for the property was no longer necessary, as the two structures that the easement was for no longer exist. However, we are looking to provide an easement for the driveway that is on city property that was not part of the original easement.
All right, questions? Mr. Smalls?
None for me.
Thank you. Ms. Nicholas?
No questions.
Ms. Crary?
The driveway that's on city property?
The driveway is on city property. The portion of the driveway is on the park property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crary. Mr. Ricks?
How long has this existed like this? Do we know?
20 years,
How many?
20.
At least.
20 years. How did we discover it?
Through the effort of investigating a question from the resident. The resident had a question on property line details, which we responded to. And through that effort, we had identified that an existing easement that provided for 2 structures on city property was no longer needed as the structures were removed, so we abandoned that easement. This easement is for the driveway that we discovered was actually on city property. It's a portion of it. It's a brick paver driveway that has been there for over 20 years.
Is there any foreseen reason that we would have to reclaim the property? And if so, is there a procedure for doing that?
There is, at least in my mind, no conceivable issue that would force us into that particular scenario, but there is a process that we can employ to abandon the easement and require its removal.
So does this have a duration to it, or is it just a blanket?
It is intended to be perpetual. This is the only point of access that's available for the property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No further questions, and we're in agreement. We will introduce and hold the first public hearing at the Mayor and City Council meeting on Monday, September 11th, 2017, at 7 p.m. Move to agenda item number 6, consideration of a bid recommendation for the purchase of 1 dump truck. Mr. Free, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening. Department of Public Works has put together a recommendation to purchase a dump truck with a snow plow and salt spreader. Prior to putting this together, we contacted numerous agencies, and Johnson Truck Center in Landover has the state of Maryland contract for the dump trucks. For the funding for this vehicle is provided with the FY 2018 CIP fleet replacement program using bond monies. This is to replace a truck that's probably about 12 years old now. And so it's recommended that we purchase this vehicle for $148,766. We presently have one that we ordered last year that's getting ready to come in, and it's actually the same price. There was no change at all in this year.
Before I move to council, Rob, we're going to sell the oldest one, is that correct?
Usually what we've
Surplus
done
it?
is we've traded them in or sold them.
Okay, is this diesel or gas, this one?
These will be diesel.
These are diesels?
Yes.
Okay. We'll move to the council. Ms. Nicholas?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Curry?
What's the delivery time on this one then?
Right now with the bodies and everything that has to be built, they're running about 7 to 8 months.
But it'll come ready to go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. Mr. Ricks?
I have no questions. It's always done in the right order, and we have the Maryland bid, and so I'm totally in favor of it.
I have one more question. What is the life of the truck usually?
Well, basically, we're getting about 10 to 12 years out of them.
That's pretty good. Okay. Thank you.
Winters are extremely hard on them because of the salt and the calcium and stuff that we use.
Just to clarify, the existing truck is somewhat usable until we get the new truck. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smalls?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Okay, if we have no further questions and the council is in agreement, we will bring up this award at the Mayor and City Council meeting on Monday, September 11th, 2017, at 7 p.m. Mary, you had something you wanted to bring up?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just while we have the opportunity, anybody that may be tuned in at home and those here tonight, I want to remind everybody they're more than welcome to attend our 9/11 Interfaith service here at the Municipal Center on Sunday, the 10th. At 5 p.m. and it'll be right out front after the service. There'll be some refreshments inside, so the public is welcome. We had this last year, and I think it turned out very, very well. And we again want to invite the public to participate. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Mr. Ricks?
I'd like to also remind everyone that the council and staff will have a town hall meeting here tomorrow night at 7 o'clock to discuss issues pertaining to not only the current status of the railroad station, but also other issues in and around the city that may be of importance to our citizens. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Anything else come before the council? Meeting's adjourned.